Okay. Welcome everybody to the Winning Workshop. So I'm Olivia and your other host is,
Hi, I'm Aimee Bailey. I'm a pelvic health physical therapist. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
and that is a very big understatement of all the cool things about Aimee. She is very educated and just the most down-to-earth health professional. And that's why we're doing this together. So I'll just maybe kind of give a lay of the land of like the plan for the workshop, and then we can dive right in, kind of go back and forth together. So we were planning to, I'm going to pull up my notes too, kind of just talk about, first of all, like connecting the dots on women's health, because there's so many different moving pieces. And one of those big things is mindset. And another big part is just education about pelvic floor and nutrition. So Aimee and I are both coming in with our areas of expertise and just bringing those together. And then the last part of connecting you to other health professionals that you may need. So we'll kind of go back and forth there. But I guess with the mindset, Aimee, did you have any particular, I have some notes, but I just wanted to ask you first if you had things you wanted to share on mindset and health.
I think just making a change to any part of your life is so hard, and you really have to have that right mindset or you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to actually make the changes that you desire if you don't get in the right headspace. If you're constantly talking negatively to yourself and reinforcing negative messages, there's no way you can combat that. You're just going to keep staying stuck in that cycle and not being able to move forward. So for me, mindset is the first step you have to really make in order to make whatever change you need in your life.
And I know you can speak to that probably a lot with, especially with your patients, like with who you see and related to pelvic health. Like even for me as your patient, I can attest to, like, it's just your health is tied, I think for women especially, is emotionally, they're interconnected, right? And so, if your physical health is not well, then it affects you emotionally, and your emotional health affects your physical health. Like they're reciprocal, right?
Yeah. And we store those emotions in our body. So sometimes when we are even negatively thinking about ourselves, we manifest that later on as pain or
Yeah.
weakness or all sorts of other things that come up, feeling stuck, feeling like we can't do certain things. And so it's really important in order to move forward to have that positive mindset and to really get around people also that have the same ability and willingness to move forward.
Yeah. And I would say, I would add to that too, is like not just peers, although that's amazing too, but like professionals. Like I posted a blog today and I was talking about finding the right professionals like you helping me, and then hiring a personal trainer for myself that specializes in this, because I needed people that could give me hope and positivity and empathy. Like you guys have been really great at, validating my feelings, saying, hey, this is real. I know this is hard, but also, hey, I have helped so many other women out of the same situation. And you have rehabbed yourself, correct? Like you've been through
Correct.
prolapse yourself. So you know what that's like.
Yeah, I have had 3 children and a host of pelvic floor issues. Even before I was even pregnant, had sacroiliac pain. So
Oh, I
yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah. I've struggled with that since I was a young athlete. So it's definitely something we have to surround ourselves, yes, with our peers, like you said, but also professionals who are really going to even allow us to tell our story. Sometimes you walk into certain settings with professionals and it's so clinical and they just diagnose you and treat you and prescribe things, but don't really listen to you.
Yeah. I feel like a good sign, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my opinion, I think it's a good sign you're in safe hands or with a good professional when they're asking you lots of questions and there's like a genuine curiosity.
I think that's when I really hear what someone's telling me. If I listen to them instead of going ahead and assuming things, oh, I've seen this before, I've heard this type of client, then I might miss the mark. I feel like patients really, for me, clients and patients really understand themselves and they may not know or, have the right word or diagnosis, but they can pretty much tell you if you allow them to talk what's going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Especially women, we have the intuition. It's so critical. We listen to that.
And I think like, I know for me, some of us struggle with like self-doubt about the ability to tell you that. Like you saying that is almost affirming to be like, you think that I know what's going on with my body? Cause I feel clueless. Like I feel lost about it, So I think that's really cool.
I'll tell you, I just want to interject. I hear a lot of times, especially people with pain will tell me, I thought it was all in my head. You mean there's something really physically wrong with me? Because if I do an exam and actually find something, it's reaffirming, like you said, to them. My clients with endometriosis, they'll say that they're like, wow, I really thought this was all in my head. And it just breaks my heart to hear that we start to question ourselves, that our symptoms aren't real,
Yeah. Because if we don't know someone who's had anything similar to us, then you feel kind of isolated, and, or just other doctors might have brushed you off.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you get that a lot. Probably people who have been brushed off, brushed over, or like, no, it's not da 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 da. You just need to be on birth control or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I
That-
do what I do. Honestly, that's why I broke off and started my own practice. I was tired of hearing that. I was tired of seeing that in clinics I worked at, other professionals that didn't care.
yeah, I want to circle back around to that because that was something I want to talk about PTs that have use insurance and the ones that don't. And we might come back around to that. But I don't want to spend too terribly much time here because where I really want you to jump in, Aimee, is pelvic floor. But the last bullet point here on mindset is just I think for me that was helpful is like needing help doesn't mean that you're broken. It's okay to need help. And that's exactly why we're here tonight and why we're doing this, is because we want to help and educate women, regardless of if you want kids, you never want to have kids, you don't plan to have kids. Like it doesn't have to revolve around childbirth or pregnancy, like just women's health in general. We can do better.
Oh, yes. And mindset is hard. I don't want to brush past that, because
Yeah.
it's easy to say in your head, oh, I'm going to be more positive. I'm going to believe in myself. I'm not going to think I look this way or whatever it is that we have in our heads. But, for me, like I have to almost make myself notes to remind myself. Do you have any techniques that you do that help you kind of stay in that positive mindset?
That's a good question. It's an ever-growing practice,
Yes.
but I think so. I'm going to try to give you the short version, but I just finished this book that talks about shame,
Mm.
but this topic could relate to anything. The author called it a shame inventory, and you take a 3x5 card and you just notice throughout the day when that is triggered. And so for anything, maybe not just shame, but like you feel yourself going down that path again, just note it. Don't judge it. Just note it so that it's an opportunity to reroute. And it sounds so good in theory, like I'm really amazing at this, but it is a practice, and I struggle with it. I wrestle every day, like it's a thing. And so I definitely can see where I've grown, but I also can see where I need to grow more in that area. But just, I think the biggest thing is observation. And I know I could probably benefit from meditation, but sitting still is so hard. But I think that is one of the benefits that I hear, like Sarah Duvall and other people who are really big advocates for meditation, is that you start to notice and observe yourself in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love that. The shame card. I mean, that's really a walking meditation. Honestly,
Yeah.
you're writing that down as you go.
Okay, it counts.
Yes, it counts. You don't have to just sit there and be like,
Oh,
even though you need to.
I know. I am working on this. Do you meditate?
Not as much as I should. Yeah. There are phases in my life where I do it more, and I can tell a difference in my anxiety and my just presence around people I care about, but definitely right now I'm in a phase where I am not doing it as much as I should.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. It's a practice.
And you go through seasons of your life where you're better and you have more capacity to focus on certain things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, Alicia will appreciate this because mindful eating is a huge part of EatWell. But before my vacation, I was sharing on our call, like I really I'm struggling right now with mindful eating. Like I had been doing well for a long time, but the last couple of months, really, it's just kind of been a steady trend of like quick eating, inhaling my food, not really thinking, and just not feeling great overall. Like I feel better when I eat slower and I'm more mindful about it. So that was my, one of the things I wanted to work on now that I'm back from vacation, is like, get back in that groove and find that again. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think just acknowledging that there's a season to all the parts of our lives, and we have more space in certain seasons to focus on certain things.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about the pelvic floor, Aimee.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, this is just the taboo area that nobody understands at all. Nobody knows what I do for a living. I think now it's becoming a buzz phrase, pelvic health, pelvic floor PT. So people are starting to kind of hear it, but they don't really even understand it. And you and I were talking about a mutual friend slash colleague who's in my field and doesn't even understand what I do as a pelvic floor PT. So I'm a PT, a physical therapist, just like any other physical therapist that someone would go to. So if you had hurt your shoulder or your foot and you found a physical therapist, I have the exact same training, but I chose to take more advanced courses after I got my degrees and pursue spine and pelvis education. So this is where I live, really. This is my favorite piece of equipment that I bring with me everywhere. And it's all connected. So I don't just look at someone's pelvis or pelvic floor, I look at them from head to toe because something in the foot can definitely throw off the pelvis and the muscles there. But a pelvic health physical therapist is going to assess you for certain conditions that other PTs might not understand. So a lot of times I'll get referrals even from other physical therapists for someone who has unrelenting back pain that nobody has been able to figure out. If they have gone to every chiropractor, every PT, every orthopedist, and they just have not found it. Sometimes they feel better, but there's no overall just resolution. Then they'll usually come to a pelvic health PT because the pelvic floor is attached right to the spine. So this might be the missing piece. Same thing with hip pain. A lot of times that hip pain that nobody can figure out, pelvic floor PT can usually at least rule out that it's not the pelvic floor. So those are some sort of orthopedic conditions that I might see. If somebody has had a fall to the butt, like a snowboarding accident, a fall off a bike, they might have a pelvic malalignment, which might throw the pelvic floor off. It can throw the abdominal muscles off. So any sort of traumatic injury, car wrecks can do that. Anything related to pregnancy and or postpartum. Anytime a woman has grown a human in their body, it is going to affect how their core functions, how their pelvic floor functions. It's going to affect their strength. It's going to affect potentially their bowel and bladder function. A lot of times we will coach people during pregnancy too, how to push, how to position themselves during labor to make it easier. We are specialists in biomechanics, so we understand how to open the vaginal outlet to make labor a little bit easier. And then postpartum, we'll help people re-strengthen. We'll work on things like if they leak urine or if they have a pelvic organ prolapse, which we can dive more into if you want to in a little bit, Olivia.
Mhm.
Talking about, I made some notes here too.
Yeah.
Any sort of pain. I mentioned the hip and back pain, but abdominal pain, pelvic pain, which could be the sacrum. It could be the pubic symphysis. Some people call this, you'll love this term, lightning crotch. If they get shooting pain up their pubic bone. Pain with intercourse is a big one I see. Painful periods, rectal pain, pain with bowel movements and constipation. I see a lot of people either before and or after surgeries like hysterectomies, even breast augmentations or breast removals after they decide to remove
Really?
their implants. Yeah, it can, of course, there's a lot of scar tissue, but it can create some limitations in their rib cage and their arm
Mhm.
movements. So just kind of getting back breath capacity and then mobility in their body. Any sort of cancer, gynecological cancer diagnosis, I'll see patients after those too. Bladder pain, sometimes bladder pain is labeled interstitial cystitis. So that can be pain with holding your urine or pain with urination, frequency of going to the bathroom, and any bowel conditions. I already mentioned constipation, but some people have fecal incontinence or rectal pain or trouble holding back gas. I mean, anything, I kind of sum it up that say really do anything with pee, poop, and sex. That's what I talk about all day long. And
I
then
thought that's what you would lead with when you started out. I was waiting for this
I
line.
kind of forgot it till just then. Yeah. So pee poop and sex is kind of my field. So, you know, most people when they call me, they're terrified. Number one, they've had my name for months and they're like, I just didn't want to call. I was embarrassed. I was scared. You've probably never heard anything like me. And I may not have, but I hear so much and none of it is taboo in my eyes. I'm here to help. And so I hear a lot. I hear a lot of things that can be shameful or embarrassing. I see a lot of people with sexual trauma or physical trauma in their past. And I'm here for it. I'm here. I do my self care so I can be present for other people to walk them through all these
Mhm.
hard things. When you pee on yourself, that is not an easy thing. That is a hard thing. That is an embarrassing thing. That can be an expensive thing if you're buying pads, so I don't want people to be fearful of reaching out to a pelvic health PT. We are in it because we love it, most of us, and we are in it because we have had most of these conditions ourselves. Probably.
Yeah. There is no taboo topic. I love you saying I do my self-care so that I can be present for you.
I have to. And I learned the hard way because I have gotten burnout and my mindset was not where it needed to be, because I would just absorb people and I would go home and cry. And I went to a counselor and said, hey, I love what I do, but I'm tired. And she was so great and told me, you have to put a bubble around yourself. And it's not so what people tell you can bounce off of you. It's so you can allow certain things to absorb through your bubble and certain things stick to your bubble. So you hear it, but you don't let it in so much that it will affect you, but you have enough empathy with it touching your bubble. And then of course there's some things that you just want to bounce off your bubble, but usually not my work stuff. It's just other stuff in life.
Yeah. That is so good.
Yeah.
Do you have, so with your pelvic floor, or your hip model there, do you have the whole deal? Can you explain like what it is in the muscles?
Yeah. So my favorite thing to show people, and my pelvic floor here is magnetic. I've had it a really long time. Your pelvic floor is not magnetic. So this first comes off and it doesn't really hold very well. Men have a pelvic floor too. Just, I know we're kind of really talking to women tonight, but they do have a pelvic floor. There are therapists who treat men and their issues, but we're just focusing on the vaginal openings here today. So if I took you and flipped you upside down, it's a completely muscular system here at the bottom of your body. There are 3 layers of muscles that are basically holding up everything above it. So you think about everything in our pelvic cavity, from our ovaries and bladder and bowel and uterus to everything sitting on top of that, our intestines, our stomach, our lungs, our head, everything is being supported by this group of muscles. They have a huge role in our life. So they provide the support. And the way I like to think of it is they are doing this all day long. They're just holding us up. They're holding us all day long. And then they provide stability to all of our joints. So I'm not sure how well this comes across on the screen, but they stabilize at our pubic symphysis. They stabilize at our back and our spine, and they are providing this stability, especially for women, because we have so many hormonal changes through our lives. With certain hormonal changes, which this could be a whole webinar in itself, we can get laxity at some of our joints. So that usually happens the first time for us during pregnancy. But some women, they, even before they ever start growing a child, they will have some ligament laxity just because of their hormones. And then definitely in menopause, we get some hormonal changes which can also affect our stability and laxity. So keeping a strong and coordinated pelvic floor can decrease any balance issues. It can, of course, create less pain for us because we have better stabilization and support here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but 3 layers of muscles. If I remove this kind of first layer here, I don't know how well it comes across, but these are small, thin muscles, and they go from the front of our pelvis here down to our sit bones. If you put your hands right under your butt, you'll feel that bone there. Those are your sit bones. So we go from pubic bone down to the sit bone, both sides, all around our urethra where we pee, our vagina, and then we have a layer right around our rectum here. If you compare the 2 layers, so this doesn't represent our second layer, but this is our 3rd layer, our deepest layer of our pelvic floor. This is the levator ani. This is the one that most people have heard of. But if you look just at the size difference between these 2 layers, these are bigger, thicker, stronger muscles. These are thinner muscles. So a lot of times when we leak substances, we usually leak urine and not feces. We just have so much more support in our back end. Now we can, but just mostly we have weakness kind of in this first layer is pretty typical for people. Yeah. Yeah. But there's also one other thing that I think is pretty cool that a lot of people don't know. We actually have muscles underneath our labia. A lot of people think it's just a fat pad, but there are muscles that help with closure of our sphincters to prevent us from leaking. Ah. And there's a ton of nerves all through here. So if you think about the spinal cord coming down through our vertebrae, it exits right here at our sacrum, and then the nerves just splay going into our pelvis, down our legs, which is why we feel that we have to pee or poop, or while we enjoy intercourse, we have a ton of nerves. But because we have so many nerves, it can also lead to a lot of pain in this area. Yeah. So when people tell me, oh, it hurts, but I can't describe it, I don't know where it is, we don't have very good proprioception or feeling of where we have pain. We just know it hurts. This hurts is what I hear a lot of times. I can't explain it. It just hurts.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm going to take a shift with the pelvic floor, but in regards to exercise, like
Yes.
I'm trying to think of how to word this question. If you were like, someone's just like, they're 20 years old and they're just fresh in college and they're just wanting to start working out and start getting into heavy lifting, but they're smart enough to know like, hey, I need to be educated on this and like know how to take care of my pelvic floor and not to manage pressure poorly. Let's say they even know that. Most don't know that at all. But if they did and they come to you and they're like, what do I need to know?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing we need to know is that we need to understand our pelvic floor better. So I think an annual checkup, just like you would go to your OBGYN to get an annual checkup, they do not check the muscle function or the nerve function of your pelvic floor. That's a physical therapist job. So just understanding, how is my pelvic floor working? Is it overactive? Is it underactive? Is the timing and coordination good? I'm seeing a Jeep pull up in my driveway, so my dogs might bark, just FYI. Just understanding their pelvic floor would be the first thing that I would want to convey to them, but second of all, understanding that I see a lot of young athletes, especially now that women are really getting involved in CrossFit and heavy lifting, seeing a lot of diastasis recti, or separation of the abdominal cavity, or pelvic organ prolapse. So just understanding that the pelvic floor does not work in isolation. It is a postural muscle. It works with the rest of our muscles. So when people say things like do your Kegels at a red light, well, that's not really how our pelvic floor works. It doesn't just sit there and contract and relax as I'm sitting at a red light. It works when I work, and it works according to the demand I put on it. So if you're in the gym and you're lifting or picking up a heavy weight, your pelvic floor should be engaging to support you and to support your body through that heavy lifting. And that's the piece that a lot of people and lifters, young lifters especially, don't know. They don't know, is my pelvic floor contracting when it should? And if it's not, how do I get it to do that? How do I coordinate that movement?
And so I don't know, I'm just like exploring this from all angles, but like if someone, if that same someone took that advice from you and they're like, okay, so I need to figure that out. I see a pelvic floor PT just to know where I'm at. Then if things look decent, maybe they would, instead of sticking with a PT, maybe find like someone like me who's got a
100%.
certification in that general area that could like navigate the way.
Yes, 100%. I definitely want all personal trainers to be better understanding of the pelvic floor, number one, but since they're not, finding one who is, especially for young female athletes, because like I said, we have the hormones that play a role in our development and our integrity of our joints, our connective tissue. So someone who really understands when you're lifting heavy, what that pelvic floor piece is doing, what the diaphragm is doing, how all of that is connected. The women I know that understand that and can coordinate that can actually lift heavier, faster, stronger. They can run further, faster, stronger. Like once you get that piece coordinated with the rest of your body, it actually improves your performance in all areas.
Ooh, so good. So Alicia, since Alicia's on here, and I know you love yoga, Alicia, Aimee is a yogi, and you could explain your certifications, all the things, but what would you say about pelvic floor in relation to yoga?
The biggest thing I hear in relation to yoga is that people, when they do inversions, they trap air in their vagina. That's the biggest thing I hear from people. And that's just not coordinated pelvic floor. I mean, the bottom of a female's body, we have 3 holes, right? And so if you don't have good timing of that contraction to close our holes and we go upside down, then we're going to let air in, and then we come back, we're going to let air out, which can be embarrassing in a yoga class, right?
Oh,
You didn't know I was going to go that direction, did you?
I didn't even think about that. I mean, because like I do things upside down all the time, but I guess I haven't had a problem with air, but that makes sense.
That's the biggest thing I hear. There is some leaking. Sometimes when people leak in yoga, they don't go back. They don't want to do it again. They're just done, But What I love yoga. I love it gets me out of my head and into my body. And for me, it's probably the best thing I can do for myself. But the transitions are hard. So right now I'm studying Pilates, and you do a set of exercises and then you stop, kind of like a workout, like a weight
Mhm.
workout. And then you do another set and you stop. But yoga, you don't stop, you flow, right? So
Mhm.
you go from one position over to another. And that's what's hard. It's the transitions that's hard. We think it's the holding the poses, which, yeah, that's hard too. But the transition is where we're putting our body through change. And we
Mm.
really need that support of our core and our pelvic floor. And we need those working together. So I love being able to talk people through yoga poses and how even certain poses will actually relax the pelvic floor, which some people really need. Some people have an overactive pelvic floor, and we need them to learn how to let it go.
Yeah.
And yoga is one of the best things because it incorporates breath, and it does put you through a variety of positions that stretch your body so you can actually release your pelvic floor.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. We'll pull up my notes, make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh dear, where did they go? Well, I might have accidentally left them. Hold that.
But
Oh,
I
there.
think
Okay.
every exercise is a core exercise. I always say that. People are like, I want to get my core. I want to do my core. I'm like, an overhead press is a core exercise. Everything is a core exercise.
Yeah.
Well, the core attaches directly to the pelvic floor in the pelvic bowl here. They actually work together. So
Mhm.
every exercise is a pelvic floor exercise too. And people just don't see that connection. So making those connections for people where they see, I don't have to sit at the red light and do 500 Kegels. I can go to whatever my favorite exercise is: running, yoga, CrossFit, uh, whatever, bar, whatever, and make it a pelvic floor activity. And it's
Mhm.
something I love. I don't have to just sit there and do a bunch of bridges.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of
So
misconceptions.
before we get into nutrition, um, I'm going to try to explain and then you can fill in the gaps. How about that? I'm going to quiz myself. But I think it's important because to talk about the breath, like just to address the breath in general and its connection with the pelvic floor. Um, because it's amazing to me that I knew, as a certified personal trainer, knew zero about that until I had to try to rehab myself after I had Nora. Like I knew nothing about the way optimal breathing should work. I don't want to just say like you're supposed to breathe, but like the best way to breathe. So like the 360 breath, where a lot of times people will breathe and they just, and on their inhale, everything just rises, chest, neck, and shoulders, and it's all here. And so when you're breathing optimally and you get that 360 breath, where I'm going to tilt my camera down, but like where you get like your ribs and your belly and your back, like there's expansion, literally 360 degrees. You inhale and you fill up with air, and your pelvic floor should be lengthening. So nothing's going up on the inhale, it's all lengthening and expanding. And then the exhale, that's where that lift from the pelvic floor comes in. And so most people that I see, including myself, before I started working on this, was the opposite. Like an exhale was a push down on the pelvic floor. And that's where leaking can come in and or prolapse. And just not good things for your pelvic floor in general.
Yeah.
So something that like has taken, and I'm still like practicing that exhale. Like I think I've got the inhale pretty good, but the exhale and the pressure and like being able to do that well is a challenge, and it takes a lot of time. So I just felt like that was worthy of addressing. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I like to describe it kind of like a piston. As you do that 360-degree breath, your diaphragm comes down, and that's actually our muscle of breathing. I think, and I blame yogis for this, but I feel like they've done a disservice in educating people how to breathe, because it's put a hand here, put a hand on your belly, feel your belly rise. I can bypass my diaphragm by just blowing up my belly. So I think it's really important to understand the 360 is moving our rib cage out of the way. So our lungs, our organ of breathing, can fill up with oxygen, and our diaphragm, our muscle of breathing, can actually come down. So that's what changes the pressure in our abdomen, which allows the pelvic floor to relax. So
That helps to hear it that way for me.
Right.
I don't think I had heard, even with my certification with Sarah, of moving your ribs out of the way so that your lungs can actually fill up with air. So when I have people with a shallow inhale, like I tell them to breathe deep and it lasts like 2 seconds, like It's probably that, right?
Yeah, get the ribs out of the way, allow the lungs to do their job. And it is, again, it's hard work. It's more mental than physical a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And some people can get overexcited. It can overstimulate their nervous system when they first start trying to breathe like this. So start slow, but understand we want to breathe well. That's what oxygenates our whole body and provides blood flow to our whole body. So it's not a minimal thing. It's a huge thing.
Yeah, and that's the 360 breath, like when you actually do lengthen and expand, is stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, right? So that is like where that unwind and the calm from
Mhm.
deep breathing can come from. But if you're breathing up here all the time, then you're just sympathetic nervous system, more anxiety, more tension.
Yeah, it can decrease pain, calm your nervous system. Yeah.
Nora, real side note, she loves Daniel Tiger, and they have a song about when you feel mad, and it says to take a deep breath, and he goes like this, and I'm like, that is not a deep breath. Like every time I hear it, I'm like, I can't. You're teaching her that's not a deep breath. That's not it. So there's a nerdy moment there, but okay. So segueing into nutrition. I'll share what I know, but I feel like Aimee, you'll have some things that you can definitely chime in on with just all of your experience and knowledge here. But so the things that come to mind when you and I were talking about how nutrition plays a direct role in like pelvic health is like caffeine and sugar. And I've heard Erica was telling me with some clients like carbonation, like
Yes.
those things can irritate the bladder. Is that right?
Yes. And that even means like carbonated water. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a flavored, it can be a LaCroix or whatever. Yes, carbonated water. Mhm.
And I think in saying that, like, it's not like every woman should be like, oh, watch out, I shouldn't have that. But if you're already experiencing some things that are off, then you
Mhm.
might want to take a look, right?
Yeah, so we call them bladder irritants, and they're not irritants for everyone. It is a list of common items that might irritate someone's bladder. So, what I always tell my clients is if you're having bladder trouble, whether that is burning, frequency, leaking, irritation, straining, anything bladder related, just take note of what you've eaten that day. It doesn't mean stop or cut it out. I'm not an all or nothing person, but take note and see if any of the things you have taken in are some of the things on this list. And some of the things on the list are caffeine, tomato-based products. So think any Italian food, citrus, chocolate is one of them.
Oh, I did forget to mention that one.
Yeah, carbonated beverages. But the interesting thing, and I always like to bring up this one client, she had bladder irritants with citrus, but it was only grapefruit.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's so specific. She could eat oranges all day long and she was fine, but grapefruit threw her for a loop. So that's where you have to kind of weigh your options. And I asked her, I'm like, well, do you eat grapefruit a ton? She's like, no, I just kind of started doing it. It's summer. I was trying to lose a little weight, whatever. And she was like, I normally don't even eat grapefruit. I was like, oh, so you don't mind cutting it out? She's like, no big deal. But for me, if coffee was a bladder irritant for me, I would seriously have to weigh that. Like, I leak with coffee, but I love coffee, so sometimes sometimes it doesn't even mean it might be something we cut out. Like Italian food. Let's say you're celebrating a big birthday and you'll go to an Italian restaurant, but it's not something you normally eat. Well, sometimes we're like, okay, I may pay for this later, but I'm going to enjoy this Italian food for tonight.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just, I think it's things to be aware of, but it does not mean cut all these things out of your diet, because I feel like when we go cold turkey, and you're the expert on nutrition, not me, but going cold turkey, sometimes we flip the other way and it just
Yeah.
damaging.
I think that's a good segue. I wanted to like just do a brief overview of EatWell, since that's part of like our little special deal for everybody at the end of the workshop. But and Alicia knows all about it. But so with EatWell, that's exactly kind of where I come into it. Is I have just found that people that do extreme things, they're not sustainable. They get burnout. They hate their lives in the process, and they just go back to whatever they were doing before, whether it was if they had lost weight, they gain it back, or if they had been feeling somewhat decent, then they feel bad again because they're eating the way they used to. So like nothing truly changes. They were just following a regimen. So EatWell is about teaching you how to make educated nutritional decisions. And then you know that for yourself. And like you're saying, like you start to learn as you go through the process of finding what works for you, you realize, oh, I don't like how that makes me feel, but sometimes the payoff might be worth it because I really like X, Y, or Z. And so, yeah, that's definitely a big part of Eat Well. I'm not an all or nothing person either. I've been there. It's not fun. And it just seems to be like the human condition of like, I have to be 100% or nothing.
Yes.
And it's just not the way life works. It's far better to think of nutrition and your health like a dial. If 10 is like, I'm all out and 0 is nothing, always keep it on. You may not be at a 9 all the time or a 2. You just got to keep it on and match it to the season of your life that you have the capacity for, and just don't turn it off. Like your health should just always, that's a healthy person in my mind, is like someone who has the wisdom to turn that dial up and down, but not turn it off or try to stay at a 10, because that's not livable.
I love that. I use that dial analogy a lot for my clients who have an upregulated nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
But I love how you said that to you defines a healthy person, someone who can kind of control their dial.
Yeah. And I think that's where having like a coach, either whether it's a personal trainer or a pelvic floor PT, or you're doing Eat Well, like whatever it is that you're doing, working on with your health, that's where having help comes in. Like sometimes doing it yourself isn't working for you. Sometimes you can do self-paced things or just like try to Google your way through. But sometimes, and I think whoever listens to this in the future, whatever, if it's you, sometimes when you need help. Like for me, I knew I needed you, Aimee. I knew I needed help when I was like crying almost every time I left the gym because I felt defeated. My symptoms were worse. And I was just like, I was in this endless mind loop of like, I'm never going to get better. This is awful. I'm supposed to be strong and I don't feel strong at all, And so like, I was like, I need help. I need someone to help me get out of my head and give me direction and just take the load off of my mind and tell me what to do. And so that's kind of where EatWell comes in, is like, I want to educate people to learn for themselves, to know how to make decisions, but I'm not just throwing you out like to fend for yourself. I'm going to guide you. And I'm giving people, some good generic guidelines for portion sizes and protein and carbs and fats. And then saying, hey, this is a guideline. You got to figure out what works for you though. So it's a starting point, and I kind of hold your hand a little bit through with our weekly phone calls and stuff. So
I love that. That's what people need. It holds them accountable, but it gives them support too.
Yeah, we all need some support. So yeah. Alicia, before we get into like the last little section of like connecting to different people or finding your tribe for your health, questions. I have a list of some questions that I've gotten from people, but Alicia, since you're here and you're live, did you have any questions?
No, this is all like completely new to me. So I'm just kind of like learning.
Right. Was there any like, oh, that was interesting for you? Like,
yeah, a lot of it actually, like just how connected it is. I have issues. I mean, I sit all day for work, right? And then I sit after work. Even if I do yoga, like half the time it's a sitting, but like I sit a lot. So just like, and the breathing, I definitely learned breathing from yoga. So I do know the difference, kind of. I'm still trying to figure it out on my own, the difference between breathing from here and breathing from your belly, which apparently both of those are not the best. So yeah, it's like all completely new and interesting to me.
Yay. And that's what I love, is like, I just want to scream that message to every woman in the world. Like it does, like I said, it doesn't matter kids or no kids. Like, I think every woman needs to know this, like how we breathe, and just like, it just impacts our lives so much. Yay.
I think too, what she said about sitting all day long. I mean, that's true of so much of our society, especially over the last couple of years of the pandemic. So many people going to work from home too, that weren't sitting before because they get up and mill about the office or whatever, at least get up, drive to their work. Now just sitting so much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a lot more hip pain, like tight hip flexors, poor posture, like just some classic things from just sitting too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to, oh, go ahead, Alicia.
No, I was also going to say, because Olivia, I told you I'm going to start trying to bike more. And so now I'm like, what do I need to know? about my pelvic floor when I'm going to now start trying to like bike, you know, regularly.
Are you
I think,
talking?
oh, go ahead, Aimee.
I was gonna say, are you talking about like riding a bike or a stationary bike?
Kind of both. So I'm taking my road bike, which I literally never use, and I'm turning it into a stationary bike.
Okay. So
So
I would say get a good bike fit first. Even if this is a bike you've ridden in the past, to make sure it still fits well, go somewhere and have a bike company do it for you. Because sitting in the saddle for so long can create a lot of numbness for us and just pain in general in the pelvic floor. So a bike fit is like the first thing I would say for the pelvic floor. I think biking is great, but start off slow. Don't go 100% in, because you really, I mean, it's a lot of pressure on the nerves. I mean, you're just sitting for a prolonged time on those nerves. So sometimes we'll see some pain from just prolonged sitting if you haven't built up your tolerance. And breathe, hold your breath on that bike. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Sing. If you're doing stationary, sing to whatever song or whatever, you know, count out loud, whatever keeps you breathing, because remember that breathing is going to affect the pelvic floor.
Okay.
Cool. Ooh, that's good. So for me, and I think everyone's different, right, with prolapse, but cycling like kind of saved my sanity for me. Like it was an activity that I could do that didn't cause problems for me. I didn't do any, like I didn't really do any hills, or if I did, it was like I would rest, like I'd go up half of the hill and I'd rest. But I could ride fast as long as I wasn't going super intense on hills, and I had the time of my life, and it was like, okay, the one thing I can do that this isn't like affecting my symptoms. So for me, biking was amazing, but I'm sure there are cases where that is the opposite for women, right, Aimee?
Yeah, but not as much. I think as long as we have a good fit, and then we don't spend too much time initially just with that compression on our pelvic floor. There are some nerve issues, and I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to like scare people.
Yeah.
Because not everybody that rides a bike gets a nerve issue. You know what I mean? It is something we see with biking. So
yeah. So I have a couple more questions I want to throw in here real fast that I had from another LivWell community member. So, and some of these, like you may like, I think they're all longer answers, Aimee. So like maybe just condense as needed and or say that might be another time. That's cool. Yeah. Where should I start? Okay, this is one I came up with because I wanted to ask you, because I think I just want to tell all the women, not all pelvic floor PTs are the same. So just because you found one doesn't mean that they're a good one. So like, what are key things maybe, Aimee, you would tell someone to look for when they're trying to find them?
Call multiple. I offer free calls for 15 minutes. And I would hope that most of them would do that. Mm-hmm. But you would want things like someone who will treat you one-on-one. You don't want someone who's running from you to 4 other people. And you just want their attention. You're dealing with a very personal problem most of the time. And you want someone who's going to be there for you for the whole time that you're together. I offer hour to hour and a half treatment sessions. You can do pelvic floor PT in 45 minutes for sure. But I would say if someone's telling you 15 and 30-minute treatments, run. Go to find someone who's going to give you a longer treatment, one-on-one. And that most of the time, and I know in some practices this isn't possible, but that most of the time you're seeing the same practitioner. 1 or 2 practitioners is fine because I think they can communicate well enough to understand your story, but you don't want to be bounced from practitioner. You don't want to see 5 different people during your care, because then you're telling your story over and over and you're not going to make the progress that you probably need to make. You want someone who's going to be able, they know your story, they're going to be able to pick up and keep you moving forward. So
that's great. I would add too, for me, just because I did have an experience, like one was okay, and I didn't really know how just okay it was until I was with you, Aimee. So that contrast would be the first PT didn't really ask me my end goals, which I think is super important part of treatment. Like, what are you wanting to accomplish? How do we know that you're ready to do it? If you don't even know what I want to do, you know, but I didn't think about this stuff at the beginning, but they're not asking me my end goals. They're not looking at my day-to-day posture. They said nothing about the breath at all. And just knowing what I know about how the breath impacts your pelvic floor and its ability to relax and contract, that's huge. So like those things were all left off the table. And so you just ask so many questions and you're looking at posture and you want to know what my end goals are, because someone who's a CrossFitter versus someone who just wants to play with their kids, their goals are going to be different and what they need is going to be different. And their next steps after PT will look different. Right. And so I think that's another important piece.
Yeah. Fill out as many as you can. If you're like we are in the Nashville area, so obviously it's a city. There are more pelvic floor PTs around here. So you can call multiple people. And a lot of therapists, including me, now offer virtual sessions. But if you live in a small town and there aren't that many, you might not have a choice. Sometimes if you're willing to travel, you can travel to other places. I've had people come to see me from all sorts of places, but just talk to them, feel them out. Just because they're nice doesn't mean they're a good pelvic floor PT either. But I'm old. I have 17 years experience, so I am going to know more about the pelvic floor than someone who's 1 or 2 years. That doesn't mean they're a bad therapist. It just means I have had touch after touch after touch, and I've seen a variety of things by now. So I don't know. Some things like that are important to people, understanding or having someone with more experience. And I do think experience can go a long way.
Okay. So another thing, not all pelvic floor PTs do internal exams. So how, if someone finds a PT that doesn't do internal, but they're like, but I do feel like they're a good fit, when do you think an internal exam is necessary? I mean, in my opinion, I wish it was just standard.
There are some outstanding PTs in my field who do not ever do internal exams, and they're doing research. They're literally like the top of my field. However, I personally feel like in order for me to understand what's going on with the pelvic floor, because there are times when people have told me what they thought what was going on, I have palpated externally, but I did that internal exam and I found more information. So for me, I feel like it's just going to give you the most information for your client to help the best. So if there's one local to you that will do an internal exam, even if you follow up with that other PT who you really liked, go get an internal exam, get that information, and then continue your care with someone else. That's okay to do. But to me, I feel like you can miss some things if you don't.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. So I've got a couple more.
Can I say one thing about the internal exam?
Yeah.
A lot of people are fearful of that component of it. I know none of us like to go to the gynecologist, but from my perspective anyway, I try to make it as comfortable as I can. I don't use a speculum like your OBGYN would use. So I feel like it's better tolerated in general because I use one gloved finger with lube. I tell people I spend more time in your vagina than your gynecologist will, but it is better tolerated and you will get more answers than you have ever learned or heard about your pelvic floor ever. But I want to take that fear component out of it because it is, I hope you can attest to this, a very relaxing situation. I try to read the room. If someone has a history of trauma, I'm very respectful of that. We can end the pelvic exam at any time, or we don't even have to start it. But if someone is willing and open, again, we can end it at any second. But I try to, if the patient is lighthearted about it, we make jokes. If they're not lighthearted about it, I'm very serious and booky about it, but definitely trying to make people feel comfortable so we can get the answers we need to get their goals met.
A good PT like Aimee, because this is what Aimee did with me, but a good PT will tell you what they're going to do before they do it. Aimee explained every step of the process. She didn't just assume just because I've been to a PT before or because I'm getting more into that field and that's what I'm searching after. She just didn't assume anything. She acted like I knew nothing and just explained from the get-go what she was going to do before she did it. And I think that's what they should all do. Cause it's personal, it's sensitive, it's scary, especially if for someone with a sexual trauma or just who has never maybe done that at all, been to an OB, if that's their first experience, they need someone to just kind of hold their hand through it. So for sure. Let's see. You mentioned, okay, 2. I'm going to do 2. I'll narrow it down to 2. I could interview you all day long. We'll just have to do a part 2. So, one is this is from a friend. I want to have a drug-free birth. So what are good exercises to practice now for getting through labor and delivery? And it's okay if you're like, that's not my specialty.
No. I coach people in this all the time. And I have almost a booklet that I give to people. This is my youngest.
Hi.
So I think mindset, the mindset has to be first. You have to prepare for a drug-free birth. You can't just expect it to get lucky. And some women do, but it is not a sprint. It is a marathon for most of us who have labors. Even a 2-hour labor, 2 hours is a long time to do anything. So the prep work, is important, but understanding different breathing strategies. Like I said, I have a booklet that I hand out to my women who I coach that want to have a drug-free delivery on when to breathe differently during different stages of labor. So, we had talked a second ago about the strategy I gave you about exhale and contract your pelvic floor. Well, someone who's pushing in labor, I'm going to teach them how to exhale and lengthen their pelvic floor, which is, it's another mind twist for you. Like, wait, you just coached me in this. Now you want me to do that.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even think about this, Aimee. I had a doula. We did the Bradley method, like the 12-week course on like natural birth, because that's what I wanted to do. And in the mindset regard, I felt very prepared. But as far as breathing and techniques, like we talked about breathing, but I didn't know there was all kinds of different breaths, and I didn't know how to connect to my pelvic floor. Like I knew nothing except for just breathe. So
the other thing I want to touch on besides the breath real quick, because I know, is the pressure that we feel when we vaginally deliver a baby. That everybody calls it the ring of fire, which I hate that because it's super fearful. If you do some perineal massage or stretching with either a pelvic floor PT or on your own, you get used to tolerating pressure at your pelvic floor, which can feel like burning. It's a stretch, right? A baby coming through the birth canal is a stretch, which even if you stretch your hamstrings, sometimes it feels like burning, right?
Yeah.
So for women who've never done any perineal massage or stretching, that ring of fire can be more intense. That's why I like people to either come to me or someone else, or do it themselves, so they can build up their tolerance for feeling pressure at their pelvic floor. So when they're in the throes of labor, it's not this huge shock to their system. They're like, oh, I've felt this before on a milder scale. I know I'm not ripping apart, and just some basic education and just feeling some of the changes that their body might go through. I love coaching women through that.
Oh, good, man. We could just really dive off into that. I will refrain. I guess that kind of ties in. So last question here for now, another time for the rest, but you kind of touched this a little, but I was going to say, when or what reason would a pregnant mama go see a pelvic floor PT? I could see it being a good idea, period. But if someone just wanted to know if it's a need to know, obviously, like what you said, perineal massage.
Yeah. So coaching for a natural delivery would be one. Some women know off the front end that they might need a C-section for medical reasons. So coaching through even what that might look like and how to support their bodies. Some of that pregnancy time is spent talking about what to expect postpartum. So it's a lot of education. But any pain, obviously you're growing a human, so a lot of back pain, hip pain, round ligament pain in the front of their bodies, pubic symphysis pain. So learning how to move with this growing body and how to support it, how to safely exercise during pregnancy.
Yeah.
If you feel good and you're not too nauseous and you feel like exercising, I want you to exercise. Not all women feel like that, but the ones who do, I have women who, I use CrossFit a lot because it's such a intense exercise, but CrossFit all the way up to date that they go into labor or run even, so I am all for doing that as long as you are taking care of yourself, eating well, and you understand, I guess, how your body is growing and changing.
Like pressure management as your baby grows, right? Like how to move.
Yeah. But I think the biggest thing people come to me for during their pregnancy would be pain.
Yeah.
Leaking's another one. Sorry.
No, don't apologize.
Yeah. So I sneeze and I pee on myself. I never did that before. Or I stand up and I pee on myself. Those are some of the big ones.
So that's something that you can help with even during pregnancy.
Yes, 100%. Now, I did have a woman come to me at 37 weeks of pregnancy the other day, and she was leaking. I'm like, we don't have a lot of time. I can give you some strategies to support you, but we will need to continue. I didn't have enough time.
Did the baby come already?
But
we'll get her after.
But you still can help, and I would say if it's a big enough bother to you, reach out at any time, even if it's 37 weeks, because you're going to get some value out of the session regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, last thing before we share the deal, show us your chicken.
I know my daughter just brought these, which is so funny. So I have two. These are my prolapse chickens. She has a grade 4 pelvic organ prolapse. You can see her prolapse coming out. And this is what we were talking about with all this pressure management talk. When we sneeze, cough, laugh, what happens? Pressure has to go down, right? Down or out. And if you don't have that support of the pelvic floor, you can easily get a pelvic organ prolapse or dropping of your organs. That is not the only cause for pelvic organ prolapse, but certainly not managing our pressure can affect the integrity of our connective tissue and our organs and the support system that we have. So I love a good visual.
Let me ask you a nerdy question real fast then. Okay. So, cause I think I might be misunderstanding. When you sneeze, should there be a lift of your pelvic floor? Or
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, 100%, because it's
Okay.
going to counterbalance that pressure downward.
So-
So if you remember me testing the quick flicks,
Yeah.
do you remember that? 1, 2, 3. So that's a fast twitch contraction. When you sneeze, your pelvic floor has to recruit hard and fast, so you don't.
To close off that opening, right?
Yeah.
So now you've seen the prolapse chicken, Alicia, and anyone else who watches. I just think that is a really good visual of like, hey, that literally like pelvic organs can descend and hopefully not in a grade 4 because that means they're visible from the outside, right?
Yes.
You know
And
that,
most of the time it is not actually your organs coming out. Now your cervix and uterus can come out, but most of the time it's actually the vaginal wall.
Okay.
Stretched because the structure of our body, like a bladder prolapse, it is not your bladder coming out of your vagina. It is your vaginal wall sinking down and dropping. But that's a whole podcast, I'm sure.
We have so much more to talk about, Aimee. I'm just gonna like make notes because I think we could do a whole one on just prolapse and diastasis or like any of that because I just know so many people who are interested in that stuff. Okay, so I guess last but not least, connecting to the right people. Aimee, I know you're gonna send me a link. Like I'm gonna put together a guide. So if Alicia, I'll send it out, and anyone who's on my mailing list, or if you're seeing this on YouTube, reach out to me, find me on social media. I can direct you to this list. But I'm gonna send that out of like how to connect with pelvic floor PTs. And Aimee and I were just kind of talking about too before tonight, how you need different people in your network in different seasons of life. Like who you going to call? Ghostbusters. No, but who are you going to call? And it's not that you're in touch with all these people all at the same time, but you just know who you need when you need them. So whether that is a personal trainer or it's a pelvic floor PT, a nutritionist, a counselor. Did I leave anyone off of there, Aimee? I know we were talking
about love working with chiropractors. I love working with acupuncturists and then coaches, whether that's a life coach, a health coach, a nutrition coach. Like I feel like having coaches in your field, depending on what stage of life or what you need, is really important. But yeah, I think you hit all of them.
Yeah, just building your team and building your team of peers too, like people in your life that can support you where you're at, as well as professionals. So the special deal is for people that sign up for EatWell. And since you're already in EatWell, sweet Alicia, you get that 25% off. So EatWell is its own thing. So that is a subscription. You just stay as long as you want to, but it's $99 a month. And then for those who sign up for EatWell, they will get 25% off of a 1-hour phone call with Aimee with the coupon code LivWell. It's one word, all caps. So I'm going to share all of that. It'll probably be Wednesday, if I'm being honest, before I get that sent out. But I'm going to send out a link to this workshop so that you can listen to it as many times as you want to. It'll live forever, and you can listen to it whenever. So I'll send that, a guide to contacts, and then that coupon code. So all of that stuff will be housed in one tidy little email for people to access. And Aimee, I can make sure you get that email too. I don't think you're on my list.
Yeah, maybe on your list. Yes.
Yeah. So I'll repeat that one more time. EatWell, sign up for EatWell, get 25% off of a 1-hour phone call with Aimee. And this isn't unique to just locals. Like Aimee said, internal exams are very telling and can be helpful, but right, Aimee, you can still do a lot even with a virtual
I
consult.
can do a lot virtually, and I can help connect you to pelvic floor PTs in your area if you're not local to me, and we feel through a phone call that you need an internal exam or you just really need some in-person treatment. I have resources to help find people in your area, so I can always help with that.
Awesome. Alicia, anything else you want to ask while you have Aimee and I?
No, I'll definitely be looking out for that email on Wednesday though.
Woohoo! Awesome. So, and if you don't follow Aimee on Instagram, she's the Pelvic Yogi. That's her handle. She's got a website. She's got a podcast. She's super awesome. And then if you don't know me, anyone who might be watching this, I know you know me, Alicia, but LivWell, LivWell, LivWell Coaching. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook and the Google. I have a website, all the things. But thank you so much for your time. Aimee, thanks for doing this with me. And Alicia, so glad you came. And I hope this is helpful to whoever sees it in the future.
Thank you.
See y'all.